Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to the UNCUT Series. As you guys are coming in, let us know where you are joining us on tonight. Go ahead and give us some likes, give us some hearts on tonight. Let us know where you guys are joining us from. And don't forget to tag someone as well as share. So we'll give it a few moments before, as we see people are coming in. But welcome, welcome, welcome to the Uncut Series. I'm so excited. All right, we have some people joining from New Jersey. Hey, Jersey. All right, all right. Come on in. Come on in. When you come on in, go ahead and give us some hearts, give us some likes. Let us know where you are joining from on this evening or maybe afternoon where you guys are at. Awesome. So keep the likes coming. I see we have more people joining. Awesome. Awesome. Okay, we have Memphis in the house. All right. Keep them coming. Give us some hearts. Give us some likes. We are so excited on tonight. Awesome. We have some folks from the DMV joining. All right. All right. All right. So we're just going to give it a few more minutes. We see people coming in. And I don't want to delay it, but we got some good stuff on tonight. And so I just want to make sure we get some more people in before we get started. All right, so we're going to go ahead and kick this thing off. We're going to go ahead and get started. If you could do me a favor before we do, please tag someone on tonight, as well as share. All right, DMV is representing on tonight. Come on in. Make sure you like, comment, and share. Like, comment, and share. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Once again, welcome everyone to the Uncut Series. We are so excited to have you guys on tonight. And so before we get this conversation started, I do want to share a little bit about the organization Uncut Youth. And for those that do not know me, my name is Larice Gerald. I am the CEO and founder of Uncut Youth. And so we are a youth empowerment and mentoring group that has been established for a little over a month now, where our goal is to really help youth in the community uncover their best self, unlock their fullest potential, to ultimately helping them helping them to walk into their destiny. And so we do service youth from the ages of 10 to 17 in the community to empower them, to inspire, as well as to engage them. And so we are dedicated to helping our youth really morph into who they are destined to become by providing a unique approach to tackling physical, social, educational, economical, and even emotional issues that affect them. And so this is why we formed the Uncut Series. And on tonight, guys, I'm so excited to kick off our first event. And let me tell you, we are going to be talking about two highly taboo topics and merging them into one platform to address some concerns, build awareness, as well as strategies for overcoming. So tonight, we are kicking the Uncut Series off with talking about mental health and education in the lives of our youth. And you know what comes to my mind is that oftentimes challenges arise in the school that affects our young people that can lead to educational as well as mental health disorders such as anxiety, depression, family conflicts, learning and behavioral disorders. And so as we prepare our youth to fully transition into going back to school, into the school where they have been really operating in the remote setting for some time, I wanted to start a conversation around how we can set our youth up for success and how they can achieve mental wellness and wholeness. So let's get started. I have two dynamic, highly educated professionals on tonight that's going to help us do just that, going to help us have this conversation. So I'm going to first bring up to the stage, I'm going to bring up Miss Jewel Dakeen. She is a licensed professional counselor with her own practice, y'all. She has her own practice called Beyond the Couch. So, Jewel, go ahead and introduce yourself for the people on tonight.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Larice, thank you so much for having me. But even more so, thank you for putting on such an important event, especially during this time. This conversation is so necessary. So thank you so much for going out on the limb and talking about something that's so important. So as Larice mentioned, my name is Jewel Dakeen, and I am a licensed professional counselor in the state of Virginia, as well as a board-approved clinical supervisor. As she mentioned, I own Beyond the Couch. It is a private practice setting where I work with adolescents and adults, as well as families, and helping them to just kind of tackle life stressors, whether it be relationship issues, mental health issues, specifically around depression and anxiety, and even issues that come up with education. So behavioral issues in school, whether it's things around attention deficit disorders, things like that, really helping them to be as successful as possible. So that's really what I do with Beyond the Couch. I literally try to go beyond the traditional kind of setting of therapy. And so that includes going out into the community, doing things like this tonight, where I am talking with people about trying to break the stigma that's associated with mental health, particularly in communities of color. That is so important. So that we can all get the help that we need. So that's really where I am, and kind of what I'm doing and what my life's work is, I guess, so to speak. So again, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited about this conversation. So,
Yes.
so yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jewel. We are excited to have you here on our first Uncut series. But you guys, we have another guest on tonight that I'm so excited to bring on. And so I'm so excited, guys, because we have the first doctor in our family that is coming on tonight. So I am excited to bring up Dr. Jessica Ferguson to the stage. So, hey, Dr. Jess, go ahead and introduce. She is an assistant principal in Virginia, but go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Thank you, Larice, again for having me. You've already started such a nice introduction. My name is Dr. Jessica Ferguson, and I'm an educator in Chesapeake, Virginia. I've been in education going on 14 years. I am, as Larice mentioned, an assistant principal. I really enjoy children and education, and I'm super excited to be a part of this conversation because, as Larice mentioned earlier as well, our kiddos are coming back. A lot of them have been virtual for this year and have had some significant losses academically because of the pandemic. And so this conversation is important for anyone that's a parent or a student, just to kind of know what to expect and how to transition from being in a virtual environment back to an in-person learning experience. Mm-hmm. My focus my studies rather, were on equity. And I really am passionate about equity, making sure that all students have what they need. My conversations really center around African American children because they experience most of the disparities educationally in the classroom, whether it's with dropout rates, graduation rates, AP enrollment. The disparities are astounding. And so my purpose and goal is to have conversations that shift that dynamic, and hopefully empower our youth and our educators to really to go beyond the traditional methods of learning and teaching to reach all students and make sure they have what they need to be successful. So I'm super excited to be a part of this conversation. Thank you again so much for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome, God. And I'm so excited. Like, I am just like, oh, I can't wait to have this conversation. So you guys, I told you, you are in for a treat. But before we kick off the conversation, you see our social media handles. Go ahead and follow us. Remember to like, comment, and share and tag, because once we get this conversation going, I don't want you guys to miss anything. Okay. So for those that are coming on in, welcome to the UNCUT series. On tonight, we are talking about mental health and education. So let's go ahead and get started with the conversation, ladies. So it's no coincidence that we're having this conversation on tonight when recently we had two professionals pull out of the Olympics for prioritizing their mental health. So, Jewel, my first question is for you. What are your thoughts around this, and what message is this sending to the world for pulling out for your mental health, for prioritizing your mental health?
That's a great question. I think the message that it's sending, or that I hope as a mental health professional that it's sending, is how important our mental health truly is. I think that this new generation, or this next generation, with Simone and Naomi pulling out of their competitions to protect their mental health, is sending a really loud message. But the question is, for parents, for teens, and just for everyone, around the world, is, are we listening? Are we really kind of tapping into ourselves and seeing ourselves in their situation, right? So I think that there is certainly, and I actually, just before this, saw an interview on CNN with a child psychologist and one of the commentators. And so she really asked the question of, well, when do you know to persevere and to push through something, and when to back out, right? And so I think that you really have to have a level of self-awareness to know, when am I in this space that I can push through what I'm struggling with, versus when I need to have a seat, when I need to pull back, and really start to take care of myself. And I think that that's what these two ladies have done. And they're showing us that it's okay. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to sit on the bench so that you can get additional help when you need it. But one of the things that I heard in particular about Simone that I thought was so important is she pushed through so much before she sat out. And I think that's the thing that we have to remember, is that there was probably a lot of times in her journey, and I certainly don't want to speak for her, but I think the correlation that I see between her and some of my clients is that there were a lot of yeses, a lot of yeses that she gave when they should have maybe been no's. In that moment, a lot of things came up for her that she pushed through because of all the pressure. And so while most of our children are not Olympians, right, there's pressure around education, there's pressure around social things that are going on, there's pressure around athletics. And I see that from the gamut with all of my clients. It just looks different. And so it's really important for us to talk to our kids, for us to talk to professionals, and really know what the difference is, and when we need to sit out versus when we need to kind of, tough it out and push through. And I think that's what we're seeing right now, is people saying, I'm not okay, and I'm going to put you first. Yeah.
That's great, because I think, over the last 16 months, we have experienced massive effects due to the COVID-19 pandemic that has had a direct impact on our overall well-being. So particularly with you, Jewel, have you seen an influx of adolescents present in terms of the mental health distressors, the anxiety, the behaviors, in your personal practice?
Absolutely. Yeah. I was completely booked, like
Wow.
very early, wait list, all of that, trying to refer out and coordinate adolescents and or families or their parents with other therapists. And all of those therapists were booked as well. So we're having, and I know Jessica may later speak to this, we're having a shortage of teachers, right? But we're also having a shortage of essential workers, including mental health professionals, because and we're really just now seeing the beginning of the impacts of the pandemic as things start to open up. So I think that we initially thought this pandemic was going to be very short. And then we realized, 16, 17 months later, we're still here and it's shifting. Things are opening up, but that's bringing in its own set of anxiety that children are feeling. And again, I'm sure Jessica will speak to that, but parents are feeling it as well.
Absolutely.
Now we have this new Delta variant and all of these things that are going on. So there's a high level of anxiety. And so, yes, the mental health field is so important, but it is, we all have waiting lists. I will say that there is a high, people are really reaching out. They're really wanting to get the help. And I encourage that, continue to do that so that you can find the right therapist for you. Absolutely.
That's great. So, Jess, this is for you. Still, kind of talking about the effects of the pandemic and what you've seen, but particularly with the suspension of the face-to-face instruction in the school systems during, COVID-19, or, as COVID-19 was occurring in the beginning parts of it, that led to a lot of rising concerns about the consequences for student learning, particularly with the transition from in-person to remote. So as an assistant principal, can you share some of your experiences with some of the learning deficiencies, as well as, some of the challenges that have impeded academic performance?
Yes, definitely. I think the biggest thing that the pandemic, displayed or magnified was the inequities that exist in education. When you had to pivot and go to a virtual learning platform, you realize, oh, wait, not everybody has the technology or the computers or the iPads or the access or the internet to do that. And then so equity becomes a concern. And then, of course, if you look at the numbers, the students or the population that's most impacted by that are students of color. Or students of color. And so students of color, unfortunately, traditionally perform worse on standardized tests and assessments and things like that. So I'm sure it will have horrible effects on that. I think it was a learning curve for everyone. When the pandemic first began, I was actually a teacher. And we were told, okay, you have to teach online and you have to figure out how to digitize everything and make everything accessible for students. And that was a learning curve for teachers as well as kids. And so I think the pandemic, the effects of it are going to be long lasting. The district that I work in is one of the few districts in Virginia that actually started transitioning students back to school a lot sooner than others. So, for example, our kiddos, they came back to school, they phased in approach, but by, I want to say mid-October, all of our students whose parents opted for them to participate in in-person learning in a K-5 setting were back in school 5 days a week. And so you have students who were in kindergarten, for example, whose their year ended in March. So they had all of that learning loss that they didn't, or instruction they didn't experience. And then they came to first grade. Right. And so as a district and as educators, we want to make sure our instruction is rigorous, but we have to adjust our expectations. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of times that didn't occur. So you were saying, okay, for example, and this is from an elementary perspective, and I'm sure it translates to middle and high school as well. But from an elementary perspective, for example, if I say a kindergartner is supposed to come to me alphabetically, we score our children reading on a level E. My whole class came to me on a C. But they're supposed to be on a J by the time school is over.
Wow.
That's still the expectation, right? And so I think the pandemic, the ripple effects of that is really going to have a hard effect on elementary. I can speak to that especially because that's the foundation, right? So if you're behind in kindergarten, you're behind in first grade, you're behind in second grade. And so school districts are implementing remediation. Federal funding has increased to do that. But guess what? As Jewel mentioned, we have a teacher shortage.
Right.
We have a teacher shortage. So for example, this year, our district offered summer school for free to everyone, right? And we leveled our students based on their need and how far behind they were. So our lowest kiddos, they were in person 5 days a week. Or in the middle, they had a hybrid model with teachers who taught them virtually. And our kids that were right on it and they were good to go, they had like a choice board of things that they could do so they wouldn't have summer learning loss compounded with possible effects of the pandemic, right? So we had all of these kids sign up. We had no teachers. We literally were hiring teachers the first week of summer school.
Wow.
They had to incentivize teachers to teach by offering them an additional $75 per day that they worked in order for them to teach because they were tired. They were burned out. They were stretched out. They were stressed out. And so we were fortunately enough able to staff our summer school sites, all of them across middle school, high school, and all of that. But it's because we had this extra funding, but we're trying to fill in these gaps. And these gaps, if they're not addressed properly, will become insurmountable. And it's concerning. It's concerning, especially seeing it from the bottom up. So just really the equity piece is what we're focusing on at my school this year. That's what I wrote my dissertation on. That is my passion. And so we're focusing on that. And equity looks different. So many people hear equity and they think students of color. That's what I focused on. But it's not always students of color. For us, it's our special ed children, right? Making sure that they have what they need. And so I think it's important for educators to take a hard look at their classrooms, but I think it's also important for parents to take a hard look at their students and to be their advocates. Because a lot of times, and through my dissertation and my research, I found out brown kids, students that look like us, their parents don't advocate because they don't know about all the opportunities. They don't push forward. And so the students that don't look like us, and it's not any judgment, but students that don't look like us, they're getting the opportunities and they may not even need them.
Yeah. And you know, go ahead.
I was just saying, I just think it's important to really, for parents to really be vigilant in this season because learning loss is real. The effects of the pandemic, educationally, academically, you're going to see them this year. If you didn't start seeing them last year and your kid might have glazed by, you're going to see them this year for sure because they're going to go to that next grade level, whether it's high school, middle school, elementary school, and those expectations are going to be there. So we had to pass on kids who made progress but didn't reach where they're supposed to be, and they're going to go to those next expectations and not be able to perform. And that's going to affect them mentally. So there is a direct correlation to all of this.
And so I'm glad you shared that, Jess. If you want me to call you Dr. Jess, I'll call you Dr. Jess.
You're fine.
You know, building on these last two questions, really, you know, I read an article that referenced that children with mental health and learning disorders frequently face discipline in school, school failure, which can then lead to problems later on in life. And so while, you know, these trajectories can be corrected, it really does come with recognition and intervention. And so, you know, you were right on when you were talking about the equity and the direct correlation. But let's go a little deeper because that's what the purpose of this conversation is about, to talk about the correlations between mental health as well as education. And so how do you think our environment, or how does our environment, and this is addressed to both of you guys, how do you think our environment contributes to these factors that we talk about with mental health, with our, environment as well as education?
Do you want me to go? So I think, that's the age-old question, right? Of like nature versus nurture. And so I think that environment definitely plays a pivotal role. And that's another reason why, even with Beyond the Couch or just being in this field, I initially started working with just adolescents. And I quickly saw that if I didn't address what was going on at home and bring those parents into that question, or I'm sorry, into that conversation, all the work that was done it fell apart, right? By the time they left the office or by the time they came into the next session. So it's really important, I think, to have these conversations and to understand that there's a direct correlation between mental health and education. I've had clients come in who initially were straight A students at the start of a year. And then because they went through a depressive episode or experienced some very high social anxiety or different types of anxiety, they were failing their classes. Sometimes their parents weren't aware of the struggles until they were failing and the school reached out. Or vice versa. So communication, and someone put that in the comments earlier, is so important. And it works both ways. I remember, my family always says it starts in the home, right? Everything with a child, everything in our lives, even how we relate to other people, it starts in the home. And so as parents, we really have to have that parental support. We have to have those conversations where our kids or our young adults feel comfortable and safe saying, I'm not okay, or I feel pressure with this, or I don't feel heard in class, or I feel discriminated against. Whatever the case may be, a parent is the child's first advocate. And we can't just toss a coin and hope that they get some great teacher or some great school counselor that's going to speak up on their behalf. So that's important. So kids go through mental health issues. The parents go through mental health issues. I see the comments. Teachers go through mental health issues. Let me tell you, yes, I have a heck ton of adolescents on my caseload, but I have so many teachers who have sought counseling in the last year and a half. With high levels of anxiety, experiencing depression and burnout from their jobs, experiencing fear of going back into the school. So we can have a conversation for days on the impact of mental health and education. But it's an important conversation to have, and it starts in the home for sure.
And just to piggyback off of what Jules said, and the proactive, you have to be proactive as a parent, whether your student is elementary, middle, or high school, you're their first teacher. And I tell my parents that all of the time, it's a partnership. And with any partnership, if one person doesn't hold up their end of it, the other side is going to fall down. I always imagine a seesaw, right? And it has to be a give and take. And you are a partner in your students' education, no matter how old they are. I think I saw someone pop up and say, about the mental health for teachers. That is such a big thing. And in my school, something I started because I knew the heavy, right? I knew the burdens that we were coming in with. As a former teacher, as an educator, I was like, this is a heavy year. So as a leader, I was proactive. I started Motivational Mondays. So every single Monday, I found a quote and I set the tone for the week. I motivated them to set goals for themselves that were achievable, but I also sent out surveys for them to tell me, okay, how can I support you? How do you feel this week? Are you drowning? Are you good? And they were able to respond, and as educational leaders or as administrators, we were able to support them. Obviously, the school system offers EAP for teachers as well, but I encourage them to find a balance and to put boundaries in place. And as a new administrator, I put the same boundaries in place for myself. I literally was talking to a veteran today, and I was like, no, you don't get paid to take it home. If it needs to be done today, you do it today. And when you leave, you're at home, and that is your time for yourself. Because if you don't fill your tank, you're going to run out of gas.
Absolutely.
If it can wait till tomorrow, it'll be there tomorrow, and you can do it tomorrow. And so that's a really important thing for any educator or any person on this call that may be transitioning back to work, and their workload may be seemingly unmanageable.
Mhm.
For teachers, I mean, our job is not a 9 to 5. We take these babies home with us, no matter how old they are, because we are passionate and we adopt these kiddos for this 7.5 hours, 8 hours that they're with us a day. And we really, we carry, they're heavy.
Mhm.
I mean, if we have a student that has a house fire, they're bringing that baggage, and we have to address that baggage. So we have things in place, social emotional learning things with our guidance counselors, check in, check out, different things like that to support them as well mentally. Because a student can't learn if they're hungry, or if they have nowhere to live,
Mhm.
or if they have no school supplies, or they have conflict in the home. There's so many things that our kids carry. Um,
Mhm.
and that's why this being connected together tonight is so important, because we have to look at the whole child.
Absolutely. And just you kind of talked about, both of you guys really talked about some of the common behaviors or signs that are exhibited in our youth that can impact their development. But can you guys go a little bit deeper, since we're talking about the correlation between the two? What are some common behaviors or some common signs from the youth? And guys, we see your questions. Keep your questions coming. We have many different segments on tonight because we really want to bring awareness to this topic. So if you guys want to send questions directly to the chat, or you can send them to Uncut Youth either on Facebook or Instagram. We will address all of your questions on tonight. So I just wanted to put that out there. But can you guys expound a little bit more on some of the common behaviors or signs?
So if it's okay, I'm going to scoop in and answer some of the questions, because it looks like a couple people have the same question about just essentially being able to identify, how do you know? What are the warning signs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what I tell people is that our children or our adolescents are smaller or younger versions of ourselves. So this can go for kids, it can also go for adults, but the signs and symptoms that you need to kind of look for is, the biggest thing is changed behavior. If you have a very outgoing kiddo who now becomes very quiet and very isolated, that's a warning sign. Something's going on. We need to have a question. We need to have a conversation. So increased fear and anxiety, them not wanting to go places. I saw that a lot, especially with the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Changes in sleeping and eating habits,
Mm-hmm.
attitudes, concentration. So when they're struggling with their ability to concentrate, to focus, complete tasks,
Mm-hmm.
lack of motivation. Another one that comes up as well is irritability. That is huge for our adolescents as well as our adults. It's really looking at that. And when you're seeing that someone is very short-tempered and they're typically not that way, that's a warning sign something's going on. The other piece, because I know Uncut looks at younger kids too, like 7 or 10 and 7, things like that. So the other piece is that some things are what we call psychosomatic. So you're experiencing something that's emotional, but it's manifesting itself physically. So if your kiddo is complaining about a tummy ache, for example, it could be their tummy is hurting, but it also could be that they're having anxiety, and that's the root of why their stomach is hurting.
Mm-hmm.
Headaches, body aches, things like that. Those are all warning signs that something else may be going on.
Got you.
Also, if you have kids who used to love going to school, and then all of a sudden they're like, I hate that. I don't want to go to school, or I don't want to go to camp, or even I don't want to go to so-and-so's house. That's another thing, a conversation for a different day, but also one that you need to be aware of, is that your kid is trying to tell you something
Mm-hmm.
when they start to change their behavior. But also as parents, look at that for yourself. If you start
Absolutely.
being short fused and irritable, and you just kind of want to run away, I get that description from people all the time. I just want to run away. I just
Right. Right.
go in
Right.
the car and drive, right? That's a sign that something else is going on for you. And you need to pause and really look at that and see what's happening. Kids crying all the time, or just, different things like that, I think is really important to look at too.
And so, Jessica, you could go ahead and respond, but we're going to shift a little bit because I see a lot of great questions coming in. And so since we're talking about the signs, common behaviors and things like that, once you respond to that, let's transition into a next topic so we can kind of address some of the questions that are coming in from our audience.
Yeah, definitely. Jewel hit on most of the points, honestly.
Okay.
I think the biggest thing is really the academic feedback as well. You have to know your kid, right? And so those behavioral changes you'll notice if you're taking the time to look and you're taking the time to have these honest conversations with your child. But the academics, a lot of times we send those papers home and they end up in the recycle bin or the trash can. And then when the report cards come, parents are like, wait, why is my child failing? There's been a pattern. And obviously teachers, it's our responsibility to reach out to the parent and establish that communication as well. But I know high schoolers and middle schoolers, it's a lot more independence and autonomy that's expected of students in that age range. And so I think the academic feedback from the school is really an important component to look at, and just having those conversations, avoiding school if your student doesn't want to go to school, if they're crying, like Jewel said, those are some key warning signs, because a lot of times children, they don't articulate or they don't know how to articulate it. So I think having these family check-ins that are casual and lighthearted, that aren't always centered around school, opens a door for a pattern of communication that you can establish with your children that will hopefully help them to be willing and feel comfortable talking to you about more difficult things as well.
And so I told you guys, this is good. I'm so excited for the twin effect. Y'all go ahead and hashtag twin effect, because this is some good stuff on tonight. I'm just like, woo, and we're going deeper, guys. So if you thought this was good, just wait, we're going a little deeper. And so I want to transition. I have a few more questions and just kind of identifying, but I want to transition a little bit and kind of talk about and discuss some of the parenting styles and the effects that a parent's mental health and can have the impacts of a parent's mental health. How can that impact our children? And do you believe that a parent can pass down mental health disorders to their children? And which behavioral as well as emotional patterns can have a long-lasting impact on their childhood, on a youth's childhood?
So I'm sorry. I feel like we're playing double dutch because I'm like, oh, I want to jump in and get this one. So sorry, twin. Let me grab this really quick, and I want to answer
all you
question in this as well, because I love his question too. So the answer to your question, Larice, of can parents' mental health impact their children? The answer is absolutely yes. Yes. So first of all, energy spreads. Our children are very aware. They are very observant. They know. My child knows when mommy's having a bad day, when mommy's tired, when I'm frustrated, etc. He knows, just like anyone else in your household would know. So yes, they know. And can it be transferable? Absolutely. So first of all, mental health, there are predispositions, meaning if you have a depressive disorder, if you have a mood disorder, anything like that, your offspring is more likely to have that, right? So that's the nature piece. That's the biological stuff. And then there's the environment stuff as well. Is if that's showing up all the time, then they are exposed to that and it affects them, right? So the reality, and I always tell people this, is everybody has mental health. So that means that you are not immune to mental illness.
Absolutely.
We all have mental health. So we first have to understand that. So that means that anybody can become depressed, can become anxious, can have any type of breakdown, etc. So we need to understand that. And then the second piece of this that I'll and then let Jessica jump in, is that there was a question around coping outlets for mental stress that you can do as a family.
Absolutely.
That's huge. So, and so much so, you can tell, if anyone's ever met my child, they know that his mom is a therapist, not just because you know me, but the way he talks about stuff. So, yesterday, he told his tutor that she should do some deep breathing exercises. I was like proud but embarrassed at the same time. And I was like, oh my God, like, why do you say that? But so you can do things as a family. Absolutely. So my family, we do meditation together the same way that we pray together. We do morning prayers and nighttime prayers and everything in between prayers when we need to. We do meditation together. We do yoga together and stretching. Every day before my son leaves, we do mantras. So I have him say 3 mantras that he's going to use throughout the day. He was really scared to go back to school. He went back face to face. And so one of the mantras that he chose was, I am brave. And he did that on his own, right? And then he picked 2 more. So it's doing things like that. Jessica mentioned something earlier about having conversations. We have table talk during dinner. How was your day? What was the best part of your day? What was your favorite day? It could be something like today, his favorite part was they had calzones at summer camp, and he was excited about that. That was his first time trying it. So having conversations like that aren't always focused on education or mood or all of those things, that's the stuff that creates the safe space where your child is like, I can talk to my mom about pizza, I can talk to her about bullying and this little girl that I like at school, right? Like, it's okay to talk about all of these things. So you want to create that safe space for your kids, but also for your family members. I think that's important too, because like you said, there's a sliding effect. And so if mom isn't good or dad isn't good, that's a problem. And so we have to be able to talk about that even as parents. I do check-ins with my husband all the time. Most times he loves it. Sometimes he's like, stop trying to therapize me. But I'm like, how are you feeling? Do you have everything you need? Do we need to make some adjustments? What are you doing for self-care, right? Have these conversations. My family knows I send out stuff all the time through text messages, books, and podcasts, and all of those things. That's our way that we can check in with each other just to make sure we're good, right? So that would be my piece on that.
What about you, Jay?
I would just chime in, and I mean, Jules said it so well, but I think the part I would add on is that you have to take care of you so you can take care of others, right? And as a parent, and while I don't have children yet, as a parent, you really got to take care of yourself, because these kiddos, they're not built to carry the weight that you do, right? And if you're not taking care of yourself and you're not making sure that your home is a welcoming atmosphere that is nurturing and promotes learning and love and kindness and respect, then your child doesn't know how to copy those behaviors. Your child doesn't know how to exhibit those behaviors at school. So social emotional learning, it takes place at home. Like the impact of a parent is really, it's huge. And I just think that sometimes we forget as adults that we're carrying the heavy. We're so used to carrying it, and then it translates and transposes to our kids. And then they come to school and they're talking about it. They're talking about it, or they're acting out because they're angry and they don't have an outlet. And then parents, you have to make it okay for them to talk to somebody other than you, right? Some parents, we all grew up with that. What's said in this house stays in this house. No, because sometimes they may not feel comfortable talking to you about you and how your choices or their daddy's choices impact them, right? It has to be okay that if the counselor calls you because your child came to them sobbing, having a breakdown in lunch, right? That it's okay that you give them permission to talk to your child and not take it personally and not take offense, because your child is crying out for help. And as a parent, your first job is to make sure they have what they need to live and to succeed and to thrive. And so I just think you have to take care of you, parents, in order to be able to have your child be successful and to grow into successful members of society, because they carry it, they pick it up, they hear it, they feel it. And it honestly, if it's not addressed, it shows with their behavior, their grades, and all of those other things that impact their education.
That's good. That's good. So how can a parent open up that conversation, to make sure that it's okay for their child to, talk to other people? Because, that's exactly what UNCUT is. We are a youth mentoring program. So we want, youth in the community to be open enough to come and talk to us about those things that are, impacting them or bothering them. And, I'm always, you guys know, I'm unscripted. I try to do things out of the box. And so I feel like this is one of the reasons why we're having this conversation around it. But how do not just a parent, but how can even some educators create a warm or mentors create a warm and welcoming environment that one, we are able to, do those check-ins with our youth, but then not hold it against them, so to speak, but actually help create a pathway where they can succeed and where they're not belittled because they are transparent about what they're dealing with.
Go ahead. Yep. You got it.
I was just going to say, I think it's important to see the child, the whole child, right? The whole picture, because sometimes we see fractions and pieces of things, and then we end up missing out on the whole child. And so if as a parent, it might be a little personal, hurt a little bit, that you don't have the best conversational relationship with your child, then that means you reach out, right? So that means you reach out to organizations like UNCUT, or you might reach out to the school and say, hey, heaven forbid, we're going through a divorce and this may impact Jessica. Can you have the counselor talk to her? So you are their advocate, and it can't be about you all the time. You have to say, okay, let me create an atmosphere. If my child doesn't feel comfortable talking to me or about what's going on at home, but I see something's bothering her, let me find an outlet. Right. And in sports and things like that, there are also great outlets, but be okay with reaching out for resources. And schools and Google and Psychology Today, all of those platforms, they have resources that you can incorporate for your kid or for your child. But I think the important part is to say, okay, if I can't have this conversation with my child myself, let me find someone who can.
And not be threatened by that.
Right.
Not be threatened by that. And so I think that the other piece that keeps coming up for me, so I'm gonna go ahead and say it because it keeps being in my spirit, is really moving away from that do as I say, not as I do. Right. And so the biggest impact is what we do, not what we say. And so allowing them to have that space to say, hey, I'm not okay. What do we need? I will tell you, as a therapist who sees adolescents, about 60% of my adolescents went to their parents and said, I need help outside of this house, separate from you. And that's huge. The other piece to realize, and I'm going to put this out here because I know we have some parents on here, is when you do put your child in therapy, yes, we work together, we communicate to some extent, but your child is the client. So that therapeutic environment is their safe space. So it's very important that you don't try to intrude upon that space. So, and a good therapist will help the parent kind of get used to this, because therapy is very new for a lot of people, by making them feel that, they're a part of the process, but they're not breaking the privacy of the child, whether that's a school counselor or an outside therapist. Now, obviously, if there's major things that come up and your child is a threat to themselves or someone else, then you have a whole different conversation. But I think it's important for us to give permission to our children to have those outside people, whether it's a mentor or a therapist or whatever the case may be. I think that's really, really important in giving them space to do that. And it doesn't mean that you failed as a parent. I got to throw that out there too. Because that's often what I hear from a parent is they're like, I failed. Why don't they open up to me, et cetera? I think most of us can agree there's a certain age where we just step back from our parents and we're like, you don't understand. Like, parents just don't understand, right?
Yeah.
That the parent failed or that they're not good at parenting. It's just the child is fighting for their independence. That's really what it is. It's about their process and their journey, not about how well or poorly you parented. So I think if we can do that and not see it as a threat, that's important.
So the next question is really around, I'm not sure if we have any actual kids on the line, but I know we have some parents. But can either of you guys share, we've talked about some of the learning losses that have been experienced in education and how mental health impacts a child's education. what are some best practices with coping with not just anxiety, emotions, and building social skills, but what are some best practices that can encourage, that can foster a deeper and more increased learning in a child?
I would just say the biggest thing is acceptance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So parents, I always like to think of a parent's love second to God, right? Your
Mm-hmm.
parent is supposed to love you unconditionally, agape type of love, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's acceptance. It's saying, okay, it's okay if you're not where you're supposed to be academically. It's okay if you have to retake this class. I will get you help. I will get you a tutor. I will do whatever I need to do to make sure you're successful. And taking that shame off of their shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think kids know, like, I mean, I don't know if it's an innate trait or what, but they know that you have expectations and they want to please you, right? And so when they don't meet their expectations, whether it's academically or behaviorally or whatever, they feel that shame. And so I think a big part of it is acceptance and saying, I love you as you are. Because when someone is loved unconditionally, I've learned that as a teacher, because like I said, I don't have children yet, but a child will do anything for you if they
Mm-hmm.
know you're in their corner. If they
Absolutely.
know you're in their corner. So I've had some of the most difficult behaviors in my classroom, but
Mm-hmm.
I fight for them and I
Mm-hmm.
fight with them for their potential to come forward. And I don't give up on them. I'm like, no, you're valuable. You are smart. You can do this. And affirming your child and accepting them, even if they feel like the dumbest kid in the world, you're saying to them, that's not, even though that's how you feel, your feelings are valid,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not true. That's not true. They're not facts. You are smart. And just accepting that piece of it and then getting them help, I think is the biggest thing. And obviously, additional help sometimes costs money. And lack of money can be an issue. But there are so many resources out there. You do have to hit the Google. You have to hit school. You might have to ask, can my child be in this remediation? Because I promise you,
Mm-hmm.
you want your child to succeed, so does your child's school. Because guess what? Them succeeding is a barometer for whether or not we're succeeding, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you feel like your child is not being successful and needs help, and it's valid, right? Because we have some parents that are just like, my child has a B, ma'am, calm
Mm-hmm.
down. A B is still good. A B
Right.
is great.
Absolutely.
But
Right.
he's legitimately struggling.
Uh-huh.
But that is our main purpose, is to make sure that all students succeed, so that number one fulfills our first goal, but number two, it shows that we're effective educators. So there is help out there, and being okay and letting your child know that it's okay to need it and to
Mm-hmm.
accept it and to ask for it.
Okay.
That's the biggest part for me.
So with Jewel, did you have anything to add?
Nope, she
Um,
covered it. That was
she
perfect.
nailed it. So with the acceptance and with advocating for our youth, I want you to kind of talk about some of the learning losses that you have witnessed, especially that now that they're getting ready to transition back into the school. We know that there's probably like a lot of anxiety with fully transitioning, and with understanding that, with that whole mentality, I have to perform, I have to do well. So can you talk a little bit about, one, what is a learning loss, and then how can we as a community, whether it's a parent, an educator, a mentor, what can we do to help, one, recognize that there is a learning loss, but then what tools can we use to help work them through whatever deficiency that they're experiencing?
Okay, so learning loss, first off, it happens to everyone, and it's not just a pandemic, right? We have something we call the summer slide.
Mm-hmm.
Every child, no matter what age, over the summer experiences learning loss because they're not in that structured environment. They're not doing rigorous academic activities. They're not. So they experience learning loss. COVID learning loss is a lot more just because effective instruction for some students. I mean, every student learns differently, right? So if your student checked out on Zoom or didn't log in, or parents didn't make sure they were on, they've missed instruction. So that is a whole different ball game than the typical learning loss that a student would experience over the summer. So learning loss is basically when those skills they deplete. Your brain is like a muscle, right? So if you don't exercise and you don't work out for a while, you start to lose that muscle mass, right? And so you start to lose some of the things that you know, or that you learned during the school year. And the biggest way to combat that is to really I don't want to say never stop learning, but never stop challenging yourself, right? So I tell my students, I used to tell them, I'm like, over the summer, you need to be reading every single day. And as parents, you can make those things fun, even if you have a high schooler, middle schooler, right? Start a book club. Like, as adults, we love a good book club. And you can't bring the wine and the brownies and all of those things, but start a book club with your family and your kids. So if you have a wide range of ages, you got elementary, you have middle, you have high school, start a book club and they get a book that's just right for them, right? And then every night you take time and you read. And then once your books are done, on a special night, you might order pizza and y'all talk about what you read, right? And you ask them questions and you probe them. I mean, and obviously you don't have to read the entire book to be able to do that, because as adults, we can skim and kind of get the gist of most material, but you have to make it fun and show them that it's a priority to you. And that's the biggest way to combat learning loss, is because if they know that learning is important to you and education is a priority to you, then it's going to be a priority to them. You have so many kids, elementary, I see it early on, who are like, oh, I have softball practice, I didn't have time to do my homework. Excuse me.
Right.
And so that keeps going. Middle school, high school, it's like, oh, I had basketball practice. Negative. Because I used to tell my elementary students, I'm like, guess what? When you're in high school, you get kicked off the team if you don't do your homework. You get kicked off the team if you're failing, and you can't go to college with failing grades, right? And so you are showing them your priorities by demonstrating them. Like, so it's not as I say, but as I do. Jules spoke on that a little earlier, but in reality, they're watching what you do
all the time.
And in order for you to have credibility with your children, you need to show them what priorities you have regarding their education. And a lot of times that's where you put your time, where you put your money, and where you put your attention. And so that's really the biggest way to combat learning loss is it's inevitable. And with COVID, because so many students went without technology for short periods of time, because I know our school system, we made sure once we got the CARES Act, we went 1-to-1. Anyone who didn't have a Chromebook, they were able to pick it up. We were really vigilant with that. But in reality, we had kids that were homeless. You give them a hotspot, but they're in a car. Are they really learning? So we're going to see COVID learning loss, but the biggest way as parents and to be proactive with that is to prioritize their education. And I've already said how to do that, but if there are any students on here, it's prioritizing it yourself too. Because as you get older, you are responsible for yourself, and every decision you make will impact you down the line. And I don't say that to give you anxiety or to scare you, but in reality, when you decide not to study for that test, that F is the consequence. And that F on that test is why you have a C instead of a B. Everything has a ripple effect. And so I encourage, parents to empower their students, but students, you need to take some of that power and responsibility yourself as well, and really make it a priority, because it's okay to have learning loss. It's going to happen. Nobody reads the book every single day. Nobody practices algebra or math equations every day. You're going to forget some things. But if you're actually being vigilant about retaining what you know, because you prioritize education and you see it as a vehicle to get you where you want to be when you grow up or when you graduate, then the learning loss is minimized and you're guaranteed to be successful.
Awesome. Jewel, do you have anything?
I just want to jump to the other side of that, because I see a question, and I have experience with that with other clients. And so the question is about if your child is on that other side of the spectrum, where their expectation of themselves is almost perfection. It's that A+, right? So a lot of that anxiety piece is around that control. And so a lot of the work that has to be done when your child is displaying those types of behaviors, whether it's with academic performance or anything else, is really getting to the root. What is the core belief that's associated with that result or that outcome? So when I have clients, it happens a lot. So it's not just the other side of the spectrum, that they are so anxious because they got a 93 and not a 100, or they got a 100 but not the 110, right? That with the extra credit, that happens. And so I think the biggest piece that I try to help them look at is breaking down, what does the A plus mean to me? What does that mean? What does it mean to me, and what does it mean about me? So if I get an A plus, I am what? Fill in the blank. If I get a C, I am what? Fill in the blank. And then really helping them to identify, where did that initially come from? Where did that start? And sometimes, and this is not parent shaming in any way, but sometimes it comes from this one instance that happened where they got an A plus and the parent was like, yes, and did all this extra stuff, and the kid internalized that as, I made my mom so happy with this A plus, I have to keep doing it. Or they saw the reverse, that they got a C in a class that they struggled with, and they saw the disappointment, or however that came, but they essentially created a narrative. They created a story that they told themselves, and they validate that over and over and over by different experiences. So the short answer to that is, always look at or have a conversation around core beliefs. What does this mean to you? Right? So core beliefs impact our lens. I always tell people, it's like wearing sunglasses. So that's how you see the world. So you have a belief, and then you see the world through that belief and that lens. And unless you adjust your lens, just like we go to the eye doctor every year and we adjust our prescription, unless you adjust that, you'll walk through life with that same way of thinking all the time. So it's important to kind of look at that. So that's my thought on that piece, is always look at, what is the core belief? Where did that come from? What does it mean to you?
You guys, this has been so fruitful. Like, I have been enjoying myself. So guys who are watching, if you have been enjoying this conversation about mental health and education, go ahead and give us some likes, give us some hearts, to let us know that you're enjoying this conversation. And we don't want to hold you too long, but we do have some final questions. And I think that, on tonight, we've talked about what is mental health. We talked about, what is the concept of how do they correlate with one another. And then how do we, identify the signs? How do we identify the signs? What type of coping mechanisms, can we implement? How, as parents and educators, what is our responsibility, but also giving our youth, a charge to prioritize their learning and recognize, it's okay sometimes to fail. It's okay sometimes to, not set that high expectation for yourself if it's going to bring forth a level of anxiety. And so, ladies, as we begin to kind of, I feel like there's so much more we can talk about with mental health. And I didn't even realize the time that we've been over an hour. But we talked about the issue. We talked about, bringing awareness to it. But what are some strategies and support options that youth, parent, and even educators, right? Because each of them have a direct contact, with our youth, with, including the youth themselves. But what strategies and support can we adopt to prevent a learning loss, as well as to achieve mental wholeness and academic success? So there's two parts. There's a few parts to that.
So I'll jump in. I know Jessica talked a little bit about the learning loss a bit, and what you can do over the summer and all of that stuff. So I'll jump in a little bit as far as the mental health piece and ways that you can cope. And I think, the biggest thing is having an awareness, is knowing. So what I tell people is, it's kind of like looking at it like a gas tank. What does my life look like when I'm at full or close to it? And what does it look like when I'm getting to empty? So for me, when I'm full, I'm having Jesus time, I'm exercising, I'm eating well, I'm being social, right? That's how I know I'm close to full. I'm at my best jewel self when I'm doing those things as consistently as possible. When life starts happening and kids started getting busy and doing all of this stuff, it starts to trickle down. And so I have to know, like, what does it look like when I'm running on fumes, so to speak? Right. So that's the first thing, is you have to have self-awareness. And that looks different for everyone. Right. The other piece is know when you need help, know when it's bigger than you. And that's okay. Everyone thinks that therapy is crisis intervention. It is not. Your house doesn't have to be on fire, so to speak. Your mental health, your mental house doesn't have to be on fire for you to get counseling. You can get counseling, as maintenance. I have clients that I've been working with for 5 years that just come in every 6 months for 2 to 3, maybe 4 sessions, just to get a tune up. That's what they call it, right? A tune up from the neck up. It's okay to do that, right? So looking at things like that. The other thing that I would say that is huge, and it is so underutilized, particularly in communities of color, and it is really looking at moving your body. That is the most effective antidepressant, anti-anxiety, but it is the least used, particularly in communities of color. Get out, walk around, go for walks, go for runs, get on the bike, whatever it is that you can do that so that you're moving your body. The other piece is to be mindful of what you're putting in your body. What we know is that when you have a really high amount of sugar in your body, not only do you, have that energy spike and then you crash, but it also causes inflammation in your brain, which then causes depression, right? So these are all things that you have to be aware of, is how you take care of your body. The next piece is, silence the noise. The world is noisy. We are constantly connected. Most people get up in the morning, they're on their phone, whether it's email, text message, social media. Stop, unplug. I encourage all of my clients, especially my adolescents, to do social media detoxes. They typically choose to do it like in the middle of the quarter when they're already stressed out, right? But I encourage you to take that time and unplug. It's okay to do that. It's okay to silence some of that noise, and do what helps you to feel safe. Self-care is big. It's changed the way that it looks during COVID, at least in the beginning with everything being shut down. But remember, self-care is whatever you do that makes you feel good. Sometimes it's getting your nails and toes done. That was my self-care today, and it felt amazing. But sometimes it's just going downstairs and sitting by yourself in the quiet when no one else is bothering you, right? It can look like whatever you need it to look like in that moment, even if it's 5 minutes. That can be your self-care, right?
That's good. Dr. Jess, what about you?
I mean, I think Jewel really hit a lot of the points, honestly. I don't want to be redundant, but she did. She hit the nail on the head in reality. And you really have to address all of those things that she mentioned, all of those coping mechanisms to prepare yourself and your student to get ready to go back to school. And I don't want to jump ahead because I don't know if that's the next topic or next question, but just preparing, you need to really use those coping mechanisms to ensure that you're successful and that you have a successful transition back to in-person learning and back to school, to the new normal.
Absolutely. And that is we will end with that. I'm still so excited. This conversation has been how to get our youth's mind right to head back to school. And I think we have unpacked so much on this evening with talking about mental health, with talking about education. But the reality is that in a short few weeks, some are going back to school early part of August, middle of August, and even after Labor Day. So as some final thoughts, what would you say? How do we get our mind right to head back to school, knowing that everything that we talked about on this evening? How do I get my mind right to head back to school?
I would just like to probably say the biggest thing is to start those routines. 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 Start those routines
Mm.
Your child, no matter how old they are, they thrive on structure. They may act like they don't like a structured environment, they don't like your rules, but they thrive on structure because kids like to know what to expect, just like we do, right? We
Mm-hmm.
would like to know how things will happen, what will happen next. We want to know what to expect. And so do children, and so do young adults, right? And so I think the biggest part is to start getting your routine together
Mm-hmm.
because it's summer. Let's all be real. You stay up late, your eating schedule's
Absolutely.
off, you eat breakfast
Mhm.
at 12, you eating dinner or lunch at 4, dinner at midnight, having a fourth meal, you're watching a movie. Get the schedule together, right? So don't start doing it the week school's about to start or that weekend. Because I'm horrible at it. I stay up late and then I can't switch to that routine to start going back to sleep at a reasonable time to make sure I'm well rested. That is the biggest thing. If
Yeah.
your child is not well rested, they are they're not going to be successful. No one can think at their best when they're exhausted. So start
Mhm.
those routines, start preparing them now, get them hyped up, be excited because like Jules said, our students, our kids, they really can pick up on our energy, right? So if you're excited about them going back to school, not because you're glad to get them out the house, but because their education is about to, go back to some sense of normalcy, they're going to get excited. So start going to look for that school supplies, right? Let them pick out a new book bag. And you might want to do that earlier because I did read an article that there's a shortage, just an
Oh,
FYI. So you might want to start doing that early, seriously, because they'll be excited. Let them pick out the notebooks that they want and all
Mhm.
of those things because we used to love doing that.
We
And
did.
they get excited about it. They get into that routine. Okay, it's summertime, Ma. Well, I don't have school tomorrow. Nope, you're going to bed at your normal bedtime. And you put that structure into place because they're going to thrive off of that. I think also having a sense of flexibility is important. Knowing that things can change, right? Right now, we don't even have guidance on the health mitigation strategies that our students will be expected to adhere to when they return to school. We don't have that yet because it keeps changing. The numbers keep changing. The governor says one thing one day, the CDC says something the next day. We don't know, but you need to make sure you're in the know so that you can help prepare your child because that reduces anxiety. Preparation, right? What's the saying? If you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
You know,
So preparation is key for this transition, right? So you need to be on top of it and say, okay, my school district is saying that you have to wear a mask. So, make sure we have masks in the book bag, make sure they're prepared, make sure, whatever conversations you need to have. If they're going to be 3 feet instead of 6 feet and your child might have some anxiety around COVID, right? Um,
mhm.
you're going to say, okay, you guys might be a little closer in class. You're allowed to wear your mask if you want to. There's extra hand sanitizer in your book bag. Give them that self-assurance. Give them that security blanket because a kid, adult, no matter how old, we want to feel secure and we want to feel safe and we want to know what to expect. So I think really laying that groundwork is really important and start to do it now. Because like Larice said, some kiddos are going back that first week of August. That's like tomorrow, it feels like.
Right.
It's coming
Uh-huh.
quickly. It's coming
Uh-huh.
quickly. So those routines need to be put in place now because a routine is something you do over and over, right? It's not something you did the night before and then you have the expectation for them to adhere to it. No, it's something you're doing over and over. So start those routines
Mhm.
now. And I think that is the biggest step to getting them ready to go back to school.
Yeah. Okay. Miss Dakeen, Jewel Dakeen, any final thoughts how we can prepare our youth to transition back into school?
I'm gonna do it this way if it's okay, really quickly. Is if
Sure.
you guys have something to write, I'm gonna give you two equations. I took a training on this several years ago, and it literally changed the way that I see things and the way that I operate. So the first equation says pain, which
Mhm.
is anything that you experience that should not be, right? That you deem should not be. So those of us in the DMV area, it could be the traffic on 66, right?
Or 495.
Or 495 if y'all out that way. I'm a 66 girl. So the traffic,
Uh-huh.
so
Mhm.
that's the pain, and then resistance. So pain plus resistance
Mhm.
equals suffering.
That's good. That's good.
So when we resist, we are saying that what I am experiencing in this moment should not be.
Mm.
So then not only are you experiencing it, but now you're miserable while experiencing it. So when you're in 66 and you're complaining and you're angry and you're this, you're not just in traffic anymore. Now you're in traffic and you're miserable, you're upset, Your mind is closed, you're irritable, you're all of these things. So the first equation is pain plus resistance equals suffering.
Mm-hmm.
The second equation is pain, so
Mm-hmm.
traffic, plus acceptance. Acceptance says that what I'm experiencing in this moment is neither right nor wrong. It just is. It's just traffic. So pain plus acceptance equals pain. And that's it. So I think that if we can take this approach, and this is what I do with my kiddo all the time, is I tell him, you have to make your bed, right? Or you have to eat this vegetable or whatever. And if you complain about it, you're going to be upset while you're eating this vegetable. But there's nothing that you can do to make you not eat this vegetable, right? And this is life. So when we start to resist life as it is presented to us, we start to suffer. But when we accept things as they are in this moment, and these mean things that we cannot change, then we're just experiencing it. So we're just sitting in traffic. When I got to a place, being a newbie in the Nova area, of being able to accept traffic as it is, then it opened me up to other things. So then I was like, oh, okay, I know I'm gonna be in traffic. I can listen to a podcast. I can call my mom. I can call one of my aunts and check in, right? But when I was resisting that thing, I wasn't trying to talk to nobody. I was honking at people. I was sneaking in the HOV lane until I got a ticket one time, and then I stopped that. Right? So when you have resistance, you do crazy stuff. But when you're practicing acceptance, you're just there. You're just experiencing it. So jot that down. Pain plus resistance equals suffering. Pain plus acceptance is just pain. It's just whatever you're experiencing.
That's good. That is good. That is good.
I would take that and I would apply that to them going back to school and whatever challenges that they have to face, that it's neither right nor wrong. It just is. This is a part of your journey and it's okay.
That is good. Ladies, I want to thank you so very much for this fruitful but yet necessary conversation on tonight. I know that there probably are a ton of folks that didn't get to watch this. And so the replay will be available for them to watch and just to learn from it. But, Jewel, I do know that you are in the area. And so for those parents that are on the line, how can they reach you if they want to utilize your services for their child?
Yeah. So the best way to reach me is through email or through my website. So my website is beyondthecouchllc.com. And my email is my first name. So Jewel at beyondthecouchllc.com. I know my social media is up there. I just caution everyone for therapists, not to reach out via social media just because it's not HIPAA compliant and we want to protect your privacy. So website and email is the best way to reach me.
Awesome. Thank you. So yes, you have all of our social media handles. You can follow Jess at Dr. Jess Leads, Jewel at Beyond the Couch LLC, and Uncut Youth at Uncut Youth LLC. And so, ladies, once again, I want to thank you guys for agreeing for agreeing to come together and have this conversation and to kick off the Uncut series. I think this is so necessary, and I'll close with this. We do have a lot of exciting things coming up in the coming months, and you can expect to see a monthly series. So this is just not the first. We are going to keep this ball going to bring awareness, to talk about these issues that are impacting our youth. And Jewel said something so important about some coping skills, and she said move your body, and it's about what you put in. And so I was just like, when she said that, it was just the door opener for me to share that on next month we are keeping the conversation going with how these issues that are impacting or affecting our youth. So on next month, we are going to talk about a healthier me. We're going to talk about the physical challenges that are affecting our youth, but more so how they can live healthier lives with transitioning. We all know that some of us have picked up a few pounds via COVID, but how can we keep our youth physically fit, physically healthy, while addressing some of the disparities that is impacting them from a health standpoint. So next month at the end of August, we are going to come back here, and we have some special guests that are going to be dropping in on our second podcast. But as you can see, we are not done. This is just the icing on the cake for talking and bringing awareness to issues that are affecting our youth in the community. And so one other thing that we're doing for Uncut, you will see socialization, because we want to not only help get our youth mind right to head back to school, we want to pour into their lives. So for the whole entire month of August, we will be partnering with the community to have a back to school drive. Dr. Jess talked about, prepping early, getting your backpacks, getting your school supplies. And so Uncut is not just a mentoring group that just wants to affect the change in the lives of our youth. No, we want to go into the community as well. So we are doing a back to school drive all month long, all month of August, to really help our youth with their transition and to provide them. We want to make a big impact with a small heart. A small impact with a big heart. And so more information on that. And so we just want to thank you guys. We are coming close to time. So if you guys could just give the Twin Effect a few more hearts before we close it down. And if you guys have enjoyed this, give us some hearts, give us some likes, and definitely refer someone to this conversation. But understand it does not stop here. And because each of us took the time to be on this call tonight, we are taking the charge that we are going to ensure that our youth continue to achieve successfully academically, but then that they are mentally well and they are mentally whole. So thank you guys so much who have joined us on tonight. We appreciate you. Thank you so much, Dr. J, and Jewel. She is a bomb therapist, guys. So she's bomb. So thank you guys so much. Have a great night. For more information, make sure you are following our social media platforms so you can see the happenings that are going on with us. So thank you all and have a good night. And thank you for attending the Uncut Series.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.